Zero.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming back again. We're on Ken Shoulders number 52, and today we're going to go through some of the Stavati history that I have and some of the screenshots that I got from Stavati that kind of further sort of clarify what subquantum kinetics is and how it relates to all of this stuff. And I think we're going to have Chip read for the most part, and I'll just kind of jump in every once in a while and make a comment or two. So I think the first one is I'll just talk about this one, Chip. So this was October 30th of 2021 when I had a Zoom call with David Wilcock and he first started talking about Stavati Aerospace and some of the things that Stavati was going to do with the hover car using anti-gravity and that type of thing, technologies that Chris had developed with Pete Peterson back in the day. So originally, David Wilcock, before he got his security clearance, when he became part of the Stavati team, because he's the director of advanced research there, he used to text me. So he texted me and sent me this. And it's interesting because this was the very first Zoom call of my whole life. In fact, I didn't have Zoom in my phone. I had to call my brother and say, hey, how do I make this Zoom call work the night before this happened? And then the very next day, we did some more with Stavati, but as we go through all these slides, we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. So what's on the next one, Brandon? And I think and then we'll get Chip to start reading. Oh, okay, so this one was after I had done, I think, the first interview with Chris Beskar, I believe, and he just sent something back to me. He texted me as well. Originally, it was Dr. Depak, the chief scientist at Stavati Aerospace, that I've had contact with after David Wilcock. And then Dr. Depak actually put me on to Chris Beskar, and then Chris started texting me. So this is just one of the texts from back in the day. I think this was probably um, maybe 3 years ago or something like that, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And so the very next day, which was October 31st of 2021, and it was Halloween, I posted the basically the theory of anti-gravity according to subquantum kinetics, because one of the things that David Wilcock had said was they knew how they had anti-gravity working, but they didn't have a theory of it. So I was like, okay, well, I know the theory because of my connection with Paul Laviolette. So I posted this on David Wilcock's forum, and if you just go to the topic of that again, I just want to show you something a little bit more, Brendan. See how it's ended up number 51, which is kind of interesting because we know that the whole story of Stavati Aerospace and Pete Peterson and Chris Beskar and all that revolved around Area 51. So it's kind of interesting. But I'll let Chip carry on here and start reading.
Okay. Hi, David. I'm a speaker designer and use both magnetic force, but more importantly, electrostatic force. I sent you my study notes from PhD Paul Laviolette, who I like to call Tesla 2.0. The theory of subquantum kinetics predicts the theory of anti-gravity. As you know, Paul is known for his superwave theory. Subquantum kinetics predicts gravity has two polarities: matter attracting gravity potential well, a matter repelling gravity potential hill. Positively charged particles such as protons generate gravity wells. On the next page, negatively charged particles such as electrons generate gravity hills. Protons and electrons combine to form electrically neutral atoms. The gravitational polarities of the protons and electrons, for the most part, neutralize. For the most part. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But a proton's gravity well marginally exceeds the electron's gravity hill. so that electrically neutral matter produces a small residual matter-attracting gravity well, generating the gravity we commonly experience pulling us to Earth. Gravity A, I think, is what that's called. And depending on the polarity and orientation of the applied electrical field, this artificially induced gravitational acceleration may be engineered either to supplement or counter that produced by the Earth's field. These are all Paul's words. I would suggest that the key to anti-gravity is called a gravity gradient. We create a gravity hole or well at the front of the spacecraft or aircraft and a gravity hill behind. Going to the next page. The front of the craft falls into the hole and the hill pushes from behind while you are in your own energy bubble. SubQuantum Kinetics also predicts a gravity wave, which, using Paul's theory, they built two high-powered lasers at 90 degrees to each other so that they can measure amplitude and direction. 2004, the first gravity wave in history was recorded, which is Einstein's thing. SubQuantum kinetics also predicts Hawking radiation, which is the superwave. I sent you an envelope about a month ago. There's also a design of mine included that will help people train to do out-of-body using sound and Russian technology. Train to do out-of-body experiences using sound and Russian technology. Interesting. This is awesome. Been waiting decades for a hover car.
Yeah. So, and this one, before we read it, and Chip, the hi Dr. Sala part, you have to read that part first. It's just the way that the email's written. But I'll just explain a little bit about this. Elena Denon was actually the very first person in the whole world that got my 80 pages of handwritten notes on subquantum kinetics that refers to anti-gravity and free energy and Nikola Tesla's work, essentially. So I sent it to her about 3 days, I think, before this. And this was April 1st of 2021. This was actually before I had a direct connection with Stavati and David Wilcox. So this is like, I don't know, 6 months before, because that other thing was in October of 2021. But yeah, you can read on here, and it's kind of cool because we have to honor Michael Salla, especially because we were just talking about that, how he's not doing so great. And it's kind of interesting that we've got two basically emails from him that talks about all this stuff. So yeah, if you go with hi Dr. Sala and then go back up to the top.
All right. Hi, Dr. Sala. I asked Elena Denon to share this with you and to ask her friend Thorhan Aredian if he thought the world is ready for this information. In the past, I had time technology used on me about 10 years ago. The file was too big, so she had to do it in 2 parts. I would like both of you to share this with everyone. It is not my writing, but the personal notes on these technologies that prove everything is real. What do you think? Have a great day, Ed. Okay, response. Thank you, Ed. Your notes are helpful in a better understanding of Paula Violet's work on electrogravitics and explanation of Brown's theories. Aloha, Michael. The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself.
So yeah, so when he sent me that, because I wasn't sure what to do with all this stuff, right? And so after getting this back from Dr. Sala, then I decided to start sending it other places, and it's been sent to a couple hundred places in the world in the last 4 years, basically. And I think you guys, for the most part, have seen the handwritten notes, but luckily somebody in our group here is helping me to digitize it so that the rest of the world can read it, because my handwriting's horrible. Yeah, so yeah, and Elena's Thorhan is Elena's basic extraterrestrial contact with the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. He is a fleet commander, or was a fleet commander. I think he's got a higher designation now. But yeah, so there is sort of this connection back to the extraterrestrials wanting us to know about all this stuff, essentially, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, Thoran's family is amazing. He has a younger brother named Jenhan, who's a terraformer, and
Hmm.
his younger sister, Saya, who consciously controls through crystals the power plant on, I guess it's Maya, one of the home worlds of the Pleiadians.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So on the next one, this is really cool too. So this is more talking about the Rockwell space chart. And so William, like we'll talk a little bit about William Tompkins, because William Tompkins designed the Rockwell space chart. He started in 1952, which is the chemical rocket program. But William Tompkins also designed the anti-gravity SSP secret space program called Solar Warden. So he's responsible for both. And there's a few other things too. William Tompkins also basically designed NORAD. He designed Cheyenne Mountain. He designed the Goddard Flight Center in Houston. He designed the vertical assembly building. He was the section engineering chief of uh, the top part of the rocket that went to the moon with the lander and all that. That was his baby. He saw the live feed. So I believe this was, yeah, sort of in the same time period, 2021, where I know Frank Chili, he asked me on the Jeff Rentz radio show. And of course, Frank and Dr. Sala and Dr. Robert Wood all knew William Tompkins personally, as did David Wilcock as well, too, right? I did ask Chris Beskar once if he had ever met Tompkins, and he said he hadn't. So, but yeah, you can go ahead. Sorry, Chip.
All right, so this is a an email from Michael Sala to Ed in June of 2021 regarding the Rockwell space chart that Ed has provided. Thanks, Ed, for sharing. It does look like the Rockwell chart is being implemented using rocket technologies by companies such as SpaceX. A good cover, very important comment, for
Hmm.
what was really done with anti-gravity tech, where humanity already has space colonies in nearby systems. You can
Star
purchase my
systems.
books at my website.
Yeah, and then there's the same, the truth is like a line, you don't have to defend it. He put that on there again, which is
Yeah.
kind of cool, right? Yeah. So, and all the best respect for Dr. Sala. So, I think there was something at the bottom there too. I can't remember what it says there.
That's what
Hi,
you
Dr.
wrote
Sala.
in. Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. I love the quote you gave me. I'm sure you already have this. When William Tompkins passed away, his best friend Frank Chili was allowed to release the Rockwell space chart. It went to a good friend of mine. Then he sent it to me. I understand the original version one is on the large wall at the Pentagon. In his book, he talks about 72 alien projects and how von Braun was not in charge.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Dr. DeBus and William Tompkins are the pioneers. Very cool. Thank you for all your knowledge and order my book. Okay.
So one thing about Dr. DeBus, I mean, I've read Tompkins' books and I've had a lot of contact with, well, six people that knew him personally, but I didn't know who the whole story about Dr. DeBus until I asked Frank Chili one day. I said, so who was he? And basically, Dr. DeBus was the man that ran the German secret space program at Peenemünde. And he was brought over with Werner von Braun. Von Braun was made the poster boy, I call it, of NASA. But the man that actually ran NASA was Dr. DeBus, essentially. So this is all part of Project Paperclip coming in and them basically doing all that stuff. So it's really interesting when you learn the whole story of William Tompkins, especially. He is the rock star, and there is a couple things on my channel about William Tompkins, and the second William Tompkins one that we did, Lacey and I did it. We found out that Tompkins is still alive, essentially, because Frank Chili told me that 2 days, he went to Tompkins' funeral. Frank Chile knew Tompkins probably the best of all the people. And Frank went to Tompkins' funeral. And 2 days after Tompkins' funeral, Tompkins texted Frank twice. And I asked Frank, I said, could I see those texts or could you tell me what they said? And he never did. But basically, the whole moral of the story is that they had developed life regression technologies and Tompkins used those. So this one here is kind of cool too, because this is Dr. Robert Wood, the main editor of Selected by Extraterrestrials, which
Oh,
is Tompkins' memoirs, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Eddie, I guess this is from Dr. Who is this from?
This is from Dr. Robert Wood.
It is from Dr. Wood. Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
to me, yeah.
Eddie, I want to thank you very much for the remarkable friendships and relationships that you have with those involved in my hunt for the truth. Prolov's book is a unique discussion of 35 chapters exploring not well-known phenomena. I sure wish I had the 131 figures that accompany his words. Frank Chile and Michael Saul are two of my current contacts. I'm so glad you gave me this package. Bob Wood. And his son has that UFO AI project running, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you look at Ken Shoulders number 35, you will see his son, Dr. Ryan Wood, in this group, essentially. We did a
Yeah.
recording with him. And what had happened was I had an address, so I sent this package off that was the 80 pages of my notes that I was talking about before and some information on Stavati, and also Carmen, who's in our group. She knows Alexander Froloff, and she asked me to have a look at New Aerospace Technologies, a book written by Alexander Froloff, who's the former owner of the Faraday Laboratory in St. Petersburg, Russia. And the reason why she asked, I think mostly was to see how subquantum kinetics and ether physics connected with all of this, and it absolutely does. That book, Neurospace Technologies, is probably the best ether physics book that has ever been written. And there's also 100 years worth of Russian researchers' stuff in there, including Kozyrev, one of my favorite Russian scientists, and a whole bunch of other people. So that's what Dr. Robert Wood is talking about here. And I did get him those accompanying figures as well, so that he got to see it. And unfortunately, and I did talk to Dr. Wood a couple times on the phone, but since then he's passed away, right? So it's a real honor to actually have contact with him and stuff. Yeah. So
I had a question. Is
yeah,
he the same Robert Wood that has the patent on a ZPE battery based on the Casimir effect? Is it the same guy?
I don't think so. Actually, no, no, I don't think so. Dr. Robert Wood actually worked at Douglas Aircraft Company during the same time that Tompkins did. And Dr. Wood told me that Dr. Wood had a PhD in aeronautics. And Dr. Wood told me that he was in a special think tank, a secret think tank, but he was not in the top secret think tank that Tompkins was in. And it was only in, I think, 2015 when Tompkins came out, started talking about stuff, that they realized that they had worked at the same place. And then Dr. Wood was asked to be the main editor of his books. Dr. Sala is the associate editor, but now that Dr. Wood has passed away, I think Dr. Sala was going to take over, because there's supposed to be 4 volumes. There's 3 volumes now, and there's one more book to be put out there. But now that Dr. Sala is, not doing so well, I'm not sure who's taking over, but I know that there are a couple other associate editors as well. So that will all come out at some point, basically. But if you really want to learn about the secret space program and what really happened, you need to learn about William Tompkins, because he's the man that designed all of it, essentially. Yeah.
And when was he born? Ed, do we know?
Yes,
William Tompkins.
1920 something, I believe. And
Yeah.
the whole story of William Tompkins is really interesting, because there were German spies coming out of Germany, and they were meeting with James Forrestal, who was the Secretary of the Navy, and they were meeting with William Tompkins, and they were meeting with another guy named Admiral Rico Botto. And those three guys basically, that was the beginning of the secret space program, essentially. And it was William Tompkins who was still a teenager when he actually started all of this with these guys, essentially. So the whole, yeah, if you learn the story of William Tompkins, you're going to learn about the history of, what happened with all of this stuff, essentially. It's
I think all those guys ended up in MJ12 too later on.
well, I know that James Forrestal was MJ3, and Frank Chili told me this. Basically, he wanted to disclose things, and MJ12 did not want to. So they put him in a psychiatric ward in a hospital, I think on the 10th or 11th floor or something. And then at one point, they actually threw him out a plate glass window. And Frank Chili told me, he said, Ed, I actually saw the real, like the actual crime report photos. And he said, where James Forrestal landed, there's no way he could have landed there had he just fallen out the window. So he was literally thrown out the window, basically. They killed him because he wanted to disclose things, essentially,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Same
Yeah.
thing with Kennedy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Do we want to
exactly.
read? Do we want to read this here?
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
So then we're last time we were talking a little bit about subquantum kinetics and etheron. And one thing that I've said to Chris Beskar, there's even a little short on my channel. I said that I think that an etheron, a charge cluster, and ball lightning are all one and the same. They're just fractals of each other. And Chris agreed with me. So that was kind of cool. So this is the actual definition right from Paul Laviolette of an etheron, and that's the etheron is the main building block of our universe, essentially, that creates the Turing wave. So that's why I wanted to have this included in here.
Yeah, and this is important just as a follow-on for what we were talking about last week and trying to understand the scalability between subatomic particles like quarks and etherons. And in my own mind, I'm still a little confused. So anyway, March 2nd, 2024, an etheron, subatomic particles and photons which make up our physical universe are themselves modulations of the ether substrate, i.e. wave patterns made up of etheron concentrations and vortical etheric fluxes within particle cores that give them the property of spin.
Very important.
So is that classical spin, Ed? The little interlude here. Is it
Um,
actual?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, you could look at it as that. Etherons, you can't see etherons. You don't need to know what their structure is. You can postulate they exist. So
Yes. Okay.
and
Hold on.
vortical motion is class. I think it's classical.
Yes, it sounds like it. And you have
it's
angular velocity and momentum, angular acceleration too.
yeah,
All right. So
and
But
and
it's
it's
an open system, so it's not closed system. It's an open system.
yes.
yeah. And so it is quite important. And I would probably have to say that what's really important too is it's spin and counterspin. So we're going to go back to Pavel Asmira's theories that are right on the money, essentially saying that. But yeah, this is kind of important. But this next line is the part that is the most important, right?
So if we regard etherons as conscious entities for physical form in subquantum kinetics is merely a manifestation of an epiphenomenon generated continually by ether flux. Let's reread that.
Yeah.
We're considering a postulate etherons as conscious entities, conscious agents, okay,
Yep.
for
Yep.
physical form. In subquantum kinetics, it is merely a manifestation of an epiphenomenon generated continually by ether flux.
Yeah. So I didn't know what epiphenomenon meant exactly, so I wrote it out just so that.
A secondary effect or byproduct emergent that rises from but does not causally influence a process.
Yeah.
Emergent.
So what you said, Chip, basically is correct. They're the conscious agent that that basically makes everything happen. And we know from someone else that's in one of the SubQuantum Kinetics groups, who's a chemist, that he says that the chemical bonds are actually etherons. So as we move up the fractal scale, etherons are doing their job as we move up, but it all comes to the fact that they are conscious. So where does that begin? It begins with the etheron.
Well, I had a question on that because
Yeah,
it's a question on scale. We have these entities down at well below the Planck length, what 10 to the minus 65,
yeah,
exponent around 65, and so clearly they're supposed to be the building blocks way down, right? We're postulating they exist. We put them so far down, you have a lot of room for making structure, right?
yeah,
Vortices, everything else. And then the consciousness, I would think, arises from whatever gets made from these guys, or as Paul implying a single individual ether itself is a consciousness entity. What was the
that's,
phrase? Well, the epiphenomenon is something that arises. What was that phrase again? That the etherons themselves, as an individual,
yeah,
has consciousness as an individual piece. Well, that's kind of an inside out. Well, you see the question. The questions we postulated this thing super small. It's understandable. Okay, we have building blocks, and our consciousness can assemble stuff
yeah,
using the ether, right? The
yeah,
ether, and then you get vortices and all that stuff. And so you
yeah,
have structure, and consciousness is now creating the structure, and consciousness maybe. And so to say that entity itself has consciousness, that appears to be well, oxymoron. It's hard to say what
yeah,
it appears to be
s-
a contradiction because what we do, we're postulating structure all the way down.
yeah.
We postulate a
So
fundamental thing. Finally, we get to the fundamental thing we call an etheron, but at way higher scales, the structure exists that we'll see is whatever, even a vacuum fluctuation is what 20 orders of magnitude bigger than the etheron.
yeah,
And so
so
you see, you can kind of see what I'm drilling on a contradiction to say
yeah,
that entity itself has consciousness. It's kind
so
of an inside out. You see where
so
I'm going with that
yeah,
question,
and
right?
I think that this next thing here is what describes it. So at the at that level, the etherons themselves are actually what create the Turing wave. So the Turing wave is actually the main building block of our universe, but it takes about 100 billion etherons to create this Turing wave. And interestingly enough, it takes about the same number of electrons to create a charge cluster from Ken shoulders, right? So there seems to be some fractality moving up the scale again, but this essentially is the Turing wave, and this is all from Paul Lavallette's work again, right? Moray, you asked me the other day about, I guess some of this is from me, but it's also from Stabati, because you're going to see in the next few slides that everything that I talk about here correlates to stuff that they had sent me back in 2021 with David Wilcock and Chris Beskar. So yeah, Chip, you can go ahead and read this.
Okay.
This is the main building block of our universe right here.
So the Turing wave is a dodecahedron, a standing wave pattern that inverts on itself and vibrates between space-time, 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time, and time-space, which is 3 dimensions of time and 1 dimension of space. Everything in our universe emanates from a single point, which is the Turing wave.
So the thing about the Turing wave that you have to understand is because it's the main building block, um, when it when it the etherons basically come out of time space into space time, create the Turing wave, and then they disappear again. And they go back and forth like this. And every time they do that and create this Turing wave pattern, that is the blinking universe, essentially. So every time it does that, the Akashic record or history, if you want to call it that, is actually recorded by that. So it's
Rewrite
actually,
memory. Yeah.
yeah,
I had a
and it's the
question.
Turing
So
wave.
we made so the Turing wave is comprised of these real tiny ether ions, and now we made a structure, a duodecon standing wave. So we made a structure. Obviously, at the source was the ether ions as the point particles in the fluid of the ether, and then the Turing waves is now a structure there.
Yeah.
The question is, approximately what order of magnitude is this duodectron
Well,
that's
this is
described here?
10 to the minus 65th. Basically, it's down at that level,
Well, the
essentially,
So
10
right?
to
this,
minus 65 was the individual etheron.
Yeah,
Now we have a duodecron made of a Turing wave, which is a collection of etherons. So
yeah.
that implies it's something larger.
But yeah, it is a little bit larger, but it's a standing wave pattern, right? So it's like cymatics. It is a cymatic pattern, essentially, is what it is, right? That's exactly what the
that makes
dodecahedron
sense.
standing
Well,
Yeah.
pattern is. And the reason why the dodecahedron is a pentagon that has 12 sides, essentially, right? It's got a pentagon in each side, but there's 12 of them. And we know, especially from Elena Denon, that source is actually at the 13th density, and it takes 12. The 12th density is basically how the Turing wave is created, essentially, right? I don't know if I explained that correctly, but
Well,
that's
this,
fine. I mean, if we're making a model, we're making a model, and it
yeah.
has the ether, a traditional ether model of a fluid, and that's where you have waves in a fluid. Everything else. So my question was a matter of scale. The fluid happens to be comprised of these individual particles that are so far down spectrum in size that we can't detect them or anything else like that for an individual one, but
Yeah.
clearly a huge collection of them go into making this the ether fluid or the ether itself, which is the malleable part. That's the part that starts to build reality. And so you postulate this Dirac size thing that was built from the ether itself. And so when I ask approximately what order of magnitude of size would this be, 10 to the minus 30th or 10 to the minus, you gave me the number 10 to the minus 65, which takes us right back to the individual particle itself.
Well,
Where an
yeah.
answer like 10 to the
So,
minus 40, oh, now we have 20 orders of magnitude of these
so,
little guys participating in this bigger guy.
so
So that's the base of the question is approximate order of magnitude of this the standing wave,
dodecahedron,
yeah,
yeah,
duodecahedron.
yeah.
It doesn't make sense to say it is 10 to the minus 65.
It's 10, so the etherons are at 10 minus 65, and then like I said, it takes about 100 billion etherons to form that Turing wave. So we could do the math basically
For
from there.
that, right. Now it takes us, if you've said 100 billion, that's 10 to the minus 11, 10 to the 11th. So 10 to the 11th of those guys. And then the size of it would be, you just add the exponents, 10 to the 50, 65, 10 to the
Minus
56.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 to the, so we're way below a vacuum fluctuation.
Yeah, yeah, and this is all below the Planck level, right? Like we were talking about last week, essentially. That's why I kind of started bringing this stuff up this week about it. Yeah, because
so Ned,
this is all from SubQuantum Kinetics from
And
Paul Levi.
just to clarify, the Turing wave is an organized set of etherons, essentially.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Yep. So it basically again
It's
the
another name
etherons
for
come
solid.
out of time space, so they're actually non-local, and they come into our reality. They form the Turing wave very quickly, and then it dissipates and disappears again, and then it
But
just does that over and over again,
Chris, the
essentially, right?
Turing wave and the soliton, it's just another name for the soliton particle.
Absolutely, Brendan. That's a
Oh, okay. Thank you,
great
Brendan.
point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a soliton. Yeah, yeah.
so could
Gotcha.
you let me spitball an idea here, kind of build off what Moray is asking about. Um, if we call the etherons themselves conscious agents, they are, they need to be conflated. They're not active consciousness until they are structured as a dodecahedron and into a Turing wave. And now that wave is moving everything in the universe has to move before time makes any sense at all. If it ain't moving, there is no time.
Yeah.
And if once time is moving and has a path and is coherent, space emerges. We just talked about emergence a minute ago, along with matter and energy and everything else. So maybe the etherons are conscious agents waiting to be conflated, amalgamated, accreted, whatever, as a structured pattern. And a pattern is what? By definition, information.
Yeah.
Now we have the engine room in the universe running. We have created consciousness from conscious agents,
Yep.
and we have created patterns and information is self-introspective.
Yeah.
It is looking back on itself as, a few folks would say this is the essence of the holographic universe, Leonard Susskind, etc.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Yeah. And I still struggle with the scalability a little bit, that 10 to the 65th to get back up to Planck, 10 to the 30th range, and then try to do something to conflate standard model physics of particle physics, subatomic particles with electrons and protons, etc., quarks, electrons, protons, and try to make sense of this fractalization.
Yeah. And so one of the things too why I brought this up, and you'll see that's in the next slides, is this Turing wave is continually going back and forth, and it is the main building block. So this is a slide from Stavati, essentially from like 4 years ago.
Before we leave, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
The idea of that structured duodecahedron was that Paul's idea, or is that you have your name on it? Was that your idea, Ed?
That's partly, I guess that's where I come in. Yeah, that's partly the dodecahedron part is mine. And I actually have the dodecahedron. Maybe I'll grab it in a second here. I've got it in the other room there to show you guys.
So all the more reason so the scale of all this, it's your invention, your idea. So you get to say what the scale is. Congratulations.
Thanks,
But this is a favorite with Dan.
Yeah, right. All right. Just so we know it's not Paul's, it's yours. Good.
Yeah.
Good job,
But
Eddie.
The dodecahedron is a favorite with Dan Winter as well, and understanding recursive implosion and the whole helicity engine room he talks about.
Yeah. This all does basically relate back to all of that. It's just that I don't know that like even Bob Grenier or Dan Winter know about the Turing wave at that level, below the Planck level, because most people cut it off at the Planck level.
Oh, right.
Paul clearly says, no, there's much, much more going on below. But what's really important, the concept here you guys have to understand is that these Turing waves all pulse exactly. Every single thing in our entire universe has this Turing wave as the building block, and it pulses at exactly the same rate. And so now if you change the rate of that pulsation, now you're actually talking about time travel and interdimensional travel, and that's what these next slides are going to talk about.
And Eddie, where did you get the dodecahedron idea from?
That partly came from listening to Elena. Partly came from, believe it or not, some meditations that Chip and I and another group had done, where I'm able to go down and meditate at the Turing wave level. So I'm able to see it basically. I guess
mainly from Elena Dana, but also from your meditations as well.
Yeah, I think the big part of
where did she get it from? Does she know where she got it from?
Yeah, that comes from Ia. Elena has she can go on board the Nibiru, which is Ia's ship.
It's and
there's a private library of Ia, and Elena's into that private library. And basically the clue is that source is at the 13th density.
So it's like an esoteric, it comes from esoterica sort of as well.
Well, I mean, if you really want to say it in one way or the other, you could say that it comes from the Galactic Confederation of Worlds and the Intergalactic Confederation also, right? That's where ultimately this information comes from, but it comes from Ia's private library, right? And I've I've been very fortunate to have contact with Elena a whole bunch of times, especially back in the beginning. And that's where some of this stuff came from. Yeah. So the next ones here, like that one we were just showing, talks about the main building blocks. See, all of space and time is the eminence of the single geometric form. Well, um, when I got these slides from Stavati, like, more than 4 years ago, I think that was part of the puzzle to put all this stuff together essentially as well too, right? And you'll see here that it's really the key to teleportation and time travel and everything in this next one. So what else have we got here? So, and here it is right here, right? So space-time to time-space, or space to counter space, right? So again, having seen this stuff, more than 4 years ago with David Wilcock and Chris Beskar, I just, kind of put two and two together essentially. It is the turning inside out and becoming a particle in time space. So remember how we were saying that in time space, there's 3 dimensions of time and there's just one of the particle. Well, this is the really important part, because that particle now has 3 dimensions of time. In other words, you can go anywhere you want in the whole universe, essentially, is what it comes down to. But it's in the non-local side, because you always have to understand that time space is the non-local side of things, right? It's the backside of the Turing wave, essentially, where these etherons come from.
Yeah, let me ask a question on the structure. So we have this 6-dimensional 3 and 3 going on, and Chris, I know Chip likes this structure. The question for you, Eddie, is these ideas. What was your source of these ideas?
Again, Elena and Stavati, basically, David Wilcock and Chris Beskar. These slides right here are from them, like 4.5 years ago, right? Yeah.
So they had this 3 and 3 model.
Yeah, they would have got it from someone else as well, maybe.
So is it from Elena? Did Elena channel this? It's the same question. It's kind of like Chip has this model. He likes this model, but he says it came from outside, right, Chip? It wasn't your idea. You got it. And now they have the same model in at least in the abstract. And my question is, what was the source of their inspiration for this model? Because I know about Dewey Larson completely independently in the 50s coming up with the same type of model.
Yeah,
including the non-local idea on the other side. These things are far away here, connected there.
And you know what, Maury? It's a kind of an interesting question, because it all actually really stems from the man that mentored Chris Beskar well at Area 51, and that was Pete Peterson, the guy that you know. So there's a lot of classified stuff that you don't know about Pete Peterson that I can.
He came up with it. That was
he may have got it from somewhere else as well. He may have got it from a bit like Elena,
I could see it channeled from all these contactees. If this is a common model, and we're way
and if it's
further dimensionality.
If it's close to the truth, then it has ancient roots. It's very ancient. If it's if the source knows about it, then it's very ancient roots, So
right.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
And I was just trying to say who was the ultimate channel that came forth. Chip can say where he read it, right?
Yeah.
Right,
yes.
Chip, you can say it wasn't you didn't invent the idea, and I knew it was familiar with Dewey Larson. So what I'm trying to say is it independent? The channeling source is a different person than let's say what Chip's channeling source, or a different entity, or whatever we're going to say.
So
I'm just drilling to the root of the idea.
Something else that you may not know about your friend Moray, Pete Peterson, is that, and I asked Chris Beskar this and he couldn't confirm it, but it did come from David Wilcock. Pete Peterson was the grandson of Nikola Tesla's lab assistant. I don't know if you knew that, but that's where some of the knowledge comes from as well. Pete, he was known as Mr. Miracle. at Area 51. He's also known as to be the smartest man ever to be there, and he mentored Chris Beskar along with Kelly Johnson, the head of Lockheed Skunk Works. Kelly mentored Chris Beskar as well. And, you know, Kelly found Area 51 and had the facility built to test the U-2 spy plane, and then eventually the SR-71, right? So it all kind of stems from that relationship. And the whole story of Stavati Aerospace is that David Wilcock had a longtime insider at Area 51 for about a decade, and his name was Pete Peterson. And it just so happens that at the same time, Pete Peterson was mentoring Chris Beskar. So Pete had done some stuff with DARPA to do with the Terminator, and he built the brain for a Terminator, and he had kind of a guilt on his conscience about that. So one day he decided to introduce David Wilcock to Chris Beskar, and over the course of about, I think it was about 12 years, they become really good friends. And then in 2021 is when I got involved with all of them, basically, and that's sort of where these slides come from and whatnot. I have over 10 hours of information from David Wilcock and Chris Beskar that talk about all of this stuff that is in a portal, a Stavati portal that I have access to. So that's where these slides actually came from back in the day. Yeah.
You know, if we step back for just a moment to expand a little bit on what Moray is asking, at the heart of this, you know, ether physics, hyperdimensional physics, is a complete inability to falsify anything, is a complete inability to do any experiments. And so why is it, Moray is asking, these ideas pop up in individuals' mind in nuggets, if you will, over a period of particularly the last 150 years?
Yeah.
The only consensus of reality that we have is that similar people with similar drive and interest are saying similar things. Pete Peterson did not ever, I would offer, fully understand how any of this worked. Yet he comes out with some amazing theories that we work with. And along comes William Tompkins, and he's saying similar things. We're trying to connect the dots.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
for us, at this stage, as a third dimensional species, we are spitballing the hell out of all of this. And yet, even having said that, I would offer that there are 11th, 12th dimensional beings in this universe that still don't fully understand all the details.
Yeah.
And that the rest is left for source.
Yeah. And Chip, I'll
You know my
just,
position. I hate
I'll,
to just
yeah,
surrender and say, Source, thank you, but
yeah.
my God, God
I'll,
damn it, that appears to be the case.
I'll go back and just clarify one thing. You said dimension, it's density. It's 11 or 12 densities. We are all in one dimension. This whole entire universe is in one dimension, essentially. And that's kind of my pet peeve, because when you get that stuff mixed up, then you don't understand the densities. And that density is what led to a better understanding of the Turing wave and the fact that source was at 13 and this dodecahedron pattern was at 12, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Here's something
And
else. In the Anunnaki universe that Ea came from, source is at 16. So 16th density. So the geometry of the Anunnaki universe has got 15 in it. It's not 12, it's got 15. So it's not a dodecahedron, it's going to be another geometry essentially that Turing wave is. And all that Turing wave really is just a frequency, because that's all that a cymatic pattern is, right? It's just a frequency. So that's where we really have to make sure that we get the density and dimension thing kind of straightened out to have a better understanding of how all
Well,
this works.
it
And
reminds me of zero-dimensional Zen chess. Zen hates ego games. So you just imagine zero-dimensional Zen chess.
yeah, you know, the point is, that is not what Elena has documented. She is very specific about documenting density levels within dimensions. A dimension is a realm. It's a rate of time passage. It's a rate of inertia, a whole lot of other things besides the foundational frequency. I'm going to stick with dimensions, and I'm going to break it out in gradients based on frequency, which is the core of everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, and that's what I get told. So neither here nor there, the vocabulary aside, at this core of this engine room is a Turing wave that's creating an informational pattern at terahertz frequencies, and it is reciprocating.
Yeah.
Negative, positive, minus, plus, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
And the agents, the compositing particles, the amalgamated particles are etherons. Now, what I would like to do is and this is over the next 6 months, obviously, is poke around and see what Paul LaViolette is written in his books. I'm very interested in his instincts and his intentions, because he too was spitballing. Nobody's ever known this for sure, unless an ET materializes behind me and starts waving his big old long finger and telling us how things really are. We're in that mode where we need to build a consensus of reality based on our intuition.
Yeah, collective
That
consciousness.
is not necessarily good science,
Yeah.
I'm fully aware of that.
So, and I think part of the reason why, again, because they had to, it goes back to the Philadelphia experiment and Montauk as well, too, because to understand how that works, you have to go back to this essentially, right? So this turning
This is the
inside
engine
out.
room. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is the engine room for time travel and everything else.
Yeah, so the thing that's kind of important too is to understand that the Turing wave is oscillating back and forth, but at 90 degrees to that, orthogonally, you also have this ether flux coming in, and this is where everything comes from as well. So Dan Winter is correct in saying that it's implosive, it's implosion and explosion, or it's inverting on itself. I like to say,
Centripetal.
yeah,
Implosive compression.
Yeah, exactly. So it is probably four-wave mixing at the end of the day, when you fully look at it, essentially. Yeah, and I think what is the next one here? Because I think it talks about, yeah. See, this is the important part right here. Atoms and molecules are constantly turning inside out, and that is this thing inverting on itself. So if you were to look at it, you would see it sort of go into itself and then come back out as a dodecahedron, and then go back into itself and come back out as a dodecahedron. When it goes into itself, it's basically in the non-local side, or the time-space side, essentially, right?
Yeah. And so me personally, there's some pushback on visualizing space-time and time-space as 3-1 and 1-3. At terahertz frequencies, it's all six-dimensional. I do not understand the details of how we break out matter and energy in space from an underlying conscious substrate of time, which is also sentient.
By the
Let's
way,
not forget that.
terahertz is kind of slow. It's not. It's still under light.
Yeah,
it's not
could even be
vibrating out
higher.
fast.
Has anyone
I mean,
said
it goes all the way up.
Chip,
So Richard Feynman would look at this slide and say, why is it the atoms and molecules are constantly turning inside out? What's driving that? And then you say, okay, it's a Turing wave.
Yeah.
Well, what is stimulating a Turing wave into activity when time could just as easily be dead quiet? Nothing's going on.
I think it's the etherons again. They're the conscious agent. So,
Chip,
and so is that a source-driven mechanism?
absolutely.
The source is stimulating the agents, the etherons.
Absolutely.
They form into a wave.
Whatever creates the self-organization, like what's driving that organization, you know?
Yes. And that organization is
Chip,
informational.
Have you said that consciousness is time and consciousness are the same thing? Time.
Yes. No, I would conflate them, because until you look at something, until time has a path, which means somebody applied their consciousness to it, it's not doing a damn thing. It's not moving. Nothing is happening. Space is still. And so
I
The
think the answer,
bizarreness is we have always looked at it ass backwards, I think. All right. We always put space at the bottom and time is just a number. It's actually ass backwards.
Yeah.
See, time is the foundation for it. And when it's ready to do something through a stimulation of some kind, and oh, how does that work? Conflates gravity into the mix. Gravity and acceleration and consciousness literally are all the same thing. I got told that also, Maury. And so this whole thing sitting
Well,
there quiet until
everything
something
is
thinks
consciousness.
about it.
So everything is
that's
consciousness or something. Everything
well
is
that
pure consciousness.
Well,
there
yeah,
you
it
go.
is.
That flashed to me
That's
too. When you asked the question, my answer to flashed in. What's the source? Who's doing this? And what
Yes.
flashed in? We are.
mhm,
And,
mhm.
and that
And it
maps
seemed,
to the two things I linked out, sent this morning.
yeah.
That somehow when we're doing these quantum experiments and starting to see, oh my gosh, it looks like they're brainwaves. What is it? What's the source of all this? And the same thing with Flash. It's us. We're looking at a mirror,
Yes.
and we get to. It's like we got to be put together in a playpen to learn to be gods, and we get to
Well,
play any way we want. And if we tangle things up, so be it. It's not an easy game to play. And so
Mm.
all these ideas flashed to me this morning, just this morning.
Yeah.
yeah.
Although
And
I remember reading this type of thing in the Seth material back in the 70s
Yeah.
when that first came out.
I've read
And
that
I
too.
thought,
Yeah.
and I said, it's coming like full circle. We need to we're learning to get our act together, and we only have so much power as individuals. But as you pointed out, as we team up coherently as a group line, all of a sudden we reach a certain maturity that makes it easier for others to join in,
Yeah.
and we are becoming beings that can make help make the reality in a very coherent, safe way.
I was
And
And
finding the
and
present
these
moment thing that's gone. I
I
always
think
find the
that
thing. I think the thing that I always find the thing that solved nearly every problem can eventually be solved by just the present moment. Meditation in the present moment, Zen meditation in the present moment. So nearly every problem that something comes along, you get stuck. Every time it's the present moment which solves it.
but you know, Brendan, that's a good point because the only solace I get lately over the last maybe 6 months and thinking about things like this is that I realize I am source. I'm a fractal of source. I
we
don't
all
have to
are.
go ask for the
Exactly.
magic barbecue sauce to
That's right.
figure out what the hell we're doing. I
Exactly.
co-create. I am
Yeah.
part of it. And maybe ultimately that's the answer to everything, Moray, right?
It
We
is.
are source.
We're
And
all
then
fractals of source. Yeah.
I got my
and
guides
we're
telling me how powerful we are. And what does that mean? Well, maybe at the essence and the design of our DNA, according to Dan Winter, 7 imaginary, five practical aspects, 12 stranded DNA that is dodecahedral in structure. And what is this? Sacred geometry, apparently, at the fucking Turing wave level. So we would appear to be plugged into the Turing wave by definition, baked into our DNA. Thank the LTNs for that.
Yeah, Elena, who's
and
an LTN.
I think we're learning to sense team with each other to make a coherent
It-
reality
that,
that takes us into greater dimensionality. At the moment, as individuals, we can't conceive because
yeah,
it's beyond our consciousness. But we're to mature into experiencing that consciousness and then having sentience at a whole different level of dimensionality. So the analogy was it's the difference between the sentience of a single skin cell participating in what we are, what it knows versus what our brains know for this reality.
yeah,
That's the analogy that was used in the global brain by Peter Russell. He says the new group mind that we are evolving into coherently will have an awareness that is at a completely different level that we as individuals can't conceive. That
yeah,
was the analogy. It's like a skin cell trying to conceive of where our consciousness conceives.
yeah,
And so we're heading into that, and we get to choose to do it. It was part of we have to do it for ourselves.
Yeah, and
We have to birth into this greater consciousness.
yeah,
Uh,
and what you
and
said about coherence is really important because it's our collective consciousness that is allowing this information to be released out into reality essentially, so that we can understand. So this is the basis of teleportation and time travel. So this again is a slide from Stavati, basically saying that this is why we're able to teleport and time travel, is because of that three dimensions of time in time space, where you can go any direction that you want essentially.
But they
That's
are
the
proposing
key.
this, right? They're proposing this said without an underlying theory of how it works, correct? Does Chris
Well,
Beskar, to this day, does he understand it?
he does, but remember, he's in classified programs where he can only
Right.
say so much. So that's why I was gifted this, if you wanted to say it that way,
Yeah.
to allow people to show it to the to everyone at some point here, essentially, right? Yeah, but I think that he does have a very, very good understanding of exactly how it all works. It's just that he's not able to come out and say it in the public, essentially, right? We know that he's been shut down a couple times now in our group in interviews. They've literally interfered when he's gone to say certain things. So obviously they're watching and controlling to a certain degree what information comes out. The more classified stuff they don't want out, but they want some of it out, essentially, right?
Could
Yeah.
we talk with him in private?
Well, we
Or,
have, and that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
could he come to Penticton?
Uh
I'll
he
buy his
he was
plane
a,
ticket
he was
for a
in
whole day sitting with Chris Beskar.
he
Wilcock
was
can come too if he wants.
yeah, he was. Well, we actually did, and I did invite both of them to Carmen's. So yes, but Chris was in Saudi Arabia very recently, so I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's working on something for the Saudis, I'm sure. But
yeah,
yeah, no, we could pull Hutchinson and Greenier in, and oh my God,
yeah,
what
yeah.
a
So this is the last slide, and I think in some ways this might be the most important one in a lot of ways, because at the very bottom of this it talks about the vacuum plasma bubble sheath.
oh
And
shit, cool.
this is the mechanism that allows us to teleport and to do time travel and all of that stuff, essentially, right? So this is again, from the slides from those guys from quite a while back. I was actually asked on the Jeff Rentz radio show because I was an expert on the Pius patents. That was one of the reasons why Frank asked me on the show, especially the Hawk. So I have tons of information that was fed to me through that Stabati portal, and this is one of them. And this might be the most important thing right here. Yeah,
Does this entail something like Cal Richardson, an
this is
EVO, a,
exactly
a,
how it
s-
works.
a self-confined, a self-stable EVO bubble, a pretty significant size that this thing is within?
Yeah. So
That is the
basically,
vacuum bubble sheath they're talking about. Same thing.
vacuum plasma bubble sheath. So what's important about that is it's vacuum to start out with, a negative pressure, right? But it's the thing that surrounds the ship so that, like Moray says, you can do those crazy turns without killing the occupant inside, because you're basically what this is a gravity bubble, if you want to call it that, because that's really what it is. It's a gravity bubble, right? So again, if you don't mind reading this, Chip, this is like the crux of it all right here, the vacuum plasma bubble sheath.
All right. So the Navy anti-gravity craft, quote, it is possible to envision a hybrid aerospace undersea craft, a HAWC, HAUC, which, due to the physical mechanisms enabled with the inertial mass reduction device, anti-gravity, can function as a submersible craft capable of extreme underwater speeds and
I will say,
enhanced
sorry, just to interrupt, I will say 400 knots underwater.
and enhanced stealth capabilities. The patent continues. All right. Next bullet, the hybrid craft would move with great ease through the air, space, water mediums by being enclosed in a vacuum plasma bubble sheath. And
Yeah.
Ken Shoulders is turning over in his grave. Caught his attention. All right.
Yeah, and again, we don't know the whole story about Ken Shoulders and Chris Beskar and how far Ken knew. I know that this comes from Pete Peterson and Chris Beskar, but I don't know how involved Ken Shoulders was. But I think he was very involved with it. It's just that it was in classified realms, right? So we only know about what he did in non-classified realms and stuff that he brought out. And we're very, very fortunate that Ken Shoulders basically foiled the patent office by releasing his book. That was one of the biggest things. If it wasn't for Ken Shoulders and a few others like John Hutchison and even Chris Beskar, I mean, we wouldn't have this knowledge essentially, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
we wouldn't be sitting here, that's for sure.
William Tompkins is another one, that is directly involved. And David Wilcock knew William Tompkins very, very well because they did Above Majestic, the movie Above Majestic with Corey Goode, right? So there's a whole connection back to all of that stuff. But I think it's just the fact that this is their way of letting it into the public domain without crossing too many lines, I guess.
Yeah.
But we're very fortunate to have the connection to both those guys, or all three of them, Pete Peterson, well, four of them with Ken Shoulders, David Wilcock, and Chris Beskar, right? And yeah, it all stems from that.
Yeah, and another question. I do know the Cal Richardson bubble was initiated with a magnet motor. Call
Oh,
it Carmen's Mueller motor or whatever.
okay.
It created a shearing force, obviously, and then it torqued the vacuum. Probably counter rotating shearing forces
Yeah.
that stimulate the vacuum. What creates the EVO stability and concentration and shape around the Volkswagen, I do not understand. And same thing with the walk. The walk is using microwave radio transmission frequency, microwaves, stimulate the shit out of the plasma within the double hull and creating, as Moray points out, stimulating the shit out of heavy isotopes and everything else that are shear the vacuum, torque it, whatever. And now you're going to get a scalar field develop, which is also gravity, which is
Yeah.
also conscious, blah, blah, blah. We see the block diagram a million times. But what the secret for the walk is to stabilize the vacuum bubble, just like Cal Richardson's Volkswagen. Now, Cal Richardson navigated with his consciousness. It does not say in anything that I've seen, that's why I want the blueprints, it does not say how he stabilized the shape of the bubble around the Volkswagen. It was a pink frothy, supposedly, classic, we've heard this before. Pink froth means the vacuum is all torqued up, jazzed up. And so here is apparently something similar. We've created EVO structure, EVO driven potentum around this vehicle. And that potentum is what's stimulating the Z field, the vacuum field for additional energy and gravity. And we can polarize gravity. If we can create gravity, we sure as hell can create anti-gravity. And so we can shape it.
Yeah, I
Starships
mean,
do it all the time. It's a piece of cake.
it's in Paul's definition that we just read through. That was the theory of anti-gravity that I basically gave to Stavati back in the day, right? From Paul's work, essentially, right? Yeah.
But
So
do you think, because you said early on at the outset of the slide deck that Beskar never had a working theory of anti-gravity.
well,
And so
okay.
I think he's probably crossed that bridge by now, I would hope.
I'm sure that they always knew, but again, it was classified, so they couldn't talk about it. So that was kind of where I came in to the mix and said, well, hey, I happen to know this theory. And the thing about it too is that Paul Laviolette was actually asked into classified programs back in the day. And had he accepted, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about subquantum kinetics because it would have been all classified. So he's another rock star, again, with Ken Shoulders, basically saying, no, I'm not gonna go into that realm, but I'm gonna provide as much information as I can to the public so that at some point this theory of anti-gravity can come out of it, essentially. But whether I'm sure that they knew the theory of anti-gravity. It's just that they couldn't talk about it. Because when David Wilcock used to text me before, and that's how I got that Zoom call link. But when he became the director of advanced technology at Stavati, on October 14th of 2020, David Wilcock and Chris Beskar were at a Trump hotel and had a meeting. I don't know if it was directly with Trump, but it was with all his guys. And then that's when all this stuff started to sort of come out, essentially. They took possession of the Niagara Falls prototype facility October 30th of 2020, when Trump was still president, but there was a clause in there that they had to wait a year. And exactly 1 year later, on October 30th of 2021, is when I had the Zoom call with David Wilcock, and it all started to become revealed and whatnot. And we started bringing it out to the public, essentially, right? So,
So now
yeah,
if we conflate that a little bit with Bob Lazar's stuff, and I'm going to take his word I'm going to take it at glass half full. He talked about breaking down the sport craft. There was a gravity A field and a gravity B field. The Muscovy antimatter reactor would amplify, would create a huge amount of electricity. I don't exactly know how that works, but in an anti-gravity reaction, you're going to create a whole lot of electricity and you stimulate that shit out of the vacuum. Gigawatts of power to drive the gravity amplifiers. All of that is understood, but he also talked about the gravity B wave, which
yeah,
is two parts to it. Gravity A is what we experience. Gravity B is what? That that was projected out of a field around the Moscovium. Moscovium is naturally a gravity
so,
creating material. So the gravity B wave gets amplified and thrown around the ship. Well, what the hell
so
is gravity B?
So one thing I can say, and this is in, I guess, private conversations with Chris, maybe on camera as well too. There, he has 4 different ways to fly the hover car. So basically, what I'm trying to say, he has 4 different theories or 4 different ways of doing anti-gravity, and the Bob Lazar way is probably like the fourth way. I know that using magnetohydrodynamics and the Lorentz force is how he's going to fly it. That's the original one. The other way is counter-rotating torsional fields, like the Nazi flying bell. That's another way. Um, the other one I can sort of speculate on, but I can't really be fully sure. But Chris and I have had these conversations before, off camera, a little bit on camera too, a little bit. And there are some shorts on my channel that talk about some of that stuff as well, too, right? One interesting thing about it is that I don't have contact with Bob Lazar, but I do have contact with Bob Lazar's manager that runs his business. And she actually had Bob watch a bunch of the Chris Beskar stuff because, of
Really?
course, well, yeah, because Chris
Yeah.
was at Area 51 as well, too, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of put those guys together, and yeah, so that's interesting. So yeah, they're all kind of watching, and yeah, it's just really cool to have the to be connected with Stavati in such a way that we've actually got some of the theories coming out, essentially, right? Because again, it's classified stuff. They don't really want it talked about. And both Chris Beskar and David Wilcock have security clearances. They cannot talk about this stuff in the public realm, right? So someone has to do it. So that's what this group is all about, right? This is SubQuantum Kinetics, and it predicts anti-gravity, as we read at the very beginning of that. And the really crazy thing about that is when I posted that, the very next day after the Zoom call with David Wilcock, it ended up number 51, which is really, kind of crazy when you think about it, the connection back to
People,
Area 51 and stuff, right?
yeah, people are
And
watching. Yeah.
yeah, and then there's even a bit more of a connection because my best friend's father flew the U-2 and SR-71 out of Area 51, and he flew for Kelly Johnson. who, he designed the U-2 and SR-71 spy planes, found Area 1, had the facility built to test the U-2, essentially. Well, Chris Beskar was mentored by Kelly Johnson, and you can see it in his SM-39 Razor, which is a Mach 4 plus plane, which is basically the modern version of the SR-71, essentially. And yeah, he spent a lot. So Chris was very, very lucky to have Morey's friend Pete Peterson mentor him, as well as all of this stuff. So he's just a very fortunate place to be, Kelly Johnson and Pete Peterson. You could not have two better mentors ever, basically, right? So it's just really cool. Yeah, and Chris has been in this group before. I mean, we had him in the group before we actually did the fifth interview, I think it was. I can't remember anymore. We've done so many with him now, because I've done 6 interviews technically, but we also had him in the group, and we've had off-camera conversations, which are the most revealing. And, that's where a lot of the really juicy stuff comes out, essentially, right? But they have shut down Chris on camera in midst of the interviews when he's saying stuff that they didn't want him to say. So they're obviously listening, right? So there is a degree of them sort of saying, okay, yeah, you can talk about this. It's the same with John Hutchison too, right? I mean, he's allowed to kind of let his stuff out there, and he's given me John Hutchison has given me access to, like, that chart that we looked at last time that had all the frequencies on it and all of that kind of stuff, right? It's just it is disclosure, and it is a planned disclosure, I think, that again was handed over from Thorhan. Thorhan Iridian handed a physical jump drive that was big, like this, to General Van Herk, the head of NORAD, and it's always been about NORAD, right? And Space Force, because Donald Trump was actually the military commander in chief of Space Force and of NORAD. They did not give Biden the nuclear codes. And I know that because I contacted Trump April 16th of 2021. I actually contacted him before I did Paul Laviolette. Paul was actually the last person I contacted to do with those 80 pages of handwritten notes, essentially. I was like, oh, I better actually get a hold of Paul and make sure he's okay with all of this as well, too, right? And Paul, I was able to share a lot of the Stavati stuff with Paul as well too, before he passed away. So that's kind of cool as well too, right? He kind of had a better understanding of where it all came from. Yeah. So yeah, very cool, right? Lots of good stuff. But it does come down to the Turing wave being the main building block and the single most important thing, I think, of what we're talking about today, other than the vacuum plasma bubble sheath. There's a huge clue there. That's a really big one, right? Yeah.
Well, that's your large scale structures, the essence of your flying saucer propulsion.
Yeah.
That's out there everywhere. As far as they're concerned, we're supposed to learn to use it, but we have to be mature enough. And so they're drawing a line. You're not really to be having this right now because you guys still aren't mature enough. You haven't linked up. But get your consciousness together. You can join the rest of us where the other beings all have it.
Yeah,
Right. So
exactly.
it's a
Yeah.
large macroscopic object, and we'll give you a clue here. Hutchison can tweak some stuff and start to warp space time a bit, but it's out of control. We're not doing it in targeting something, and then you realize, oh my gosh, they have weapons that do target things, and so we realize, gee, uh, we're not ready if we're going to go after weapons, working this technology, because it does the human race no good to make weapons.
Yeah.
Right? If we're going to join the others, we can't be a space cowboy, right? Just shooting things up. So
And
that's
why
where we're at, man.
Yeah, and we're on probation kind of with the Galactic Confederation of Worlds at this point. So when that probation period is over is when full disclosure will occur, and including extraterrestrial contact.
Mhm.
You're not going to maybe see blue Octarians at first, but you are going to see people that look like us that aren't from here, is
Maybe
what it
Chip
comes
will
down
just
to.
maybe Chip will just take off his mask.
There you go. Maybe we'll all take our masks off.
Surprise!
Exactly, right? But I think it's our collective consciousness in groups like this, but all as an overall whole, that allows this stuff to happen too, right? So it's really important. But at the end of the day, it's those little etherons that are the conscience agents that are actually directly connected with source. So that was a question that you had, Moray. Where does this come from? Well, those come directly from source, essentially, right? That's the whole gist of the theory as well, too, in my understanding of it, anyways.
The
Yeah.
beyondness, right?
Yeah, we get
God, I
to
hate it when I hear that. The beyondness.
yeah,
Yeah.
we get to manipulate. This is what the PK is all about. We get to manipulate the Turing coherence of Turing wave stuff. It's to make stuff out of the vacuum, cohere pockets of energy,
Yeah.
and we do it mentally. As individuals, maybe we can bend some spoons by rubbing them, and things
Yeah.
like that. As
Yeah.
groups, we can start to do more, and we're supposed to learn to handle it. That's the lesson here. We're
Yeah.
supposed to mature
It's
to where we're handling this properly, and then as we do, we get to join the others who already are there. And
one thing that Elena has said that always stuck with me was, well, two things. First, the compact fusion reactor that comes out of the PIES patents. On my Trump charts, that's due to be released in 2030. And so that's like a really important part right there, right? That compact fusion reactor. And Elena has also said that, again, it might not be a blue-skinned Arcturian, but 2030 is supposedly when we're going to have contact with extraterrestrials in the public realm, because we've had it for a long time. I mean, the whole selected by extraterrestrials, William Tompkins, he had multiple secretaries, but really two secretaries that he basically said, yeah, they weren't from here. And they used telepathy to put thoughts in my head, basically, that helped me create the NASA, the Rockwell space chart, all of NASA, and including the secret space program known as Solar Warden, right? So it goes back to these characters. And one thing I do remember Frank Chile saying is that they thought that Tompkins' mother wasn't from here. So Tompkins would be what would be considered a high content extraterrestrial, if you want to call it that, because of his mother not being from here, essentially. Apparently, she was Palladian. And that's something that Frank Chile had told me.
Yeah,
So,
which makes
yeah.
which
sense.
would then explain the source of all these ideas that we're basically tapped into these greater consciousness entities,
Yep.
and we get receiving our information, and that's why we get a fire hose of information. It's
Yep.
coming through us,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's coming through
and
us. Yep.
and so
The you
that's
had the
that's just part
envoys on
of
top of
our
that. Yeah,
yeah,
Well,
our
that's what,
evolution, and I guess that's the disclosure. Open up,
it
your
is.
minds are
and
connected, and open up to the information,
yeah,
and you
and
won't be allowed to use it recklessly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
And so it's easy to just close now because it's essentially not believed by those who aren't ready to hear it. So it
well,
will
yeah,
just be
that's right.
ignored. But the information is being shared, and we see. That's why I ask questions on the source of the information to see the independence of, well, it came through somebody, and if that's somebody like Pete Peterson just channeling away and just tapped in, so be it. Then we know, okay, Chip has directly received, right? Chip, you directly
Yeah.
receive revelation on these
Well,
ideas, and
parts
others
of our
likewise.
entire group. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's kind of fun to see, well, are we repeating what somebody else said, or are we just having the revelation directly? And maybe this revelating capability is definitely increasing across the human race, which
Absolutely.
is a good sign that we are progressing to mutual telepathy, including contact with higher beings that will definitely help guide our mature evolution to handle stuff safely, because
Yeah,
if we're going to manifest with our minds, we don't want to manifest dangerous things.
yeah, exactly.
So there's
Yeah.
there is we're being guided like a good parent.
Oh,
We're guided,
definitely.
So
trying
probably
to,
far more so than any other species in the galaxy because they know of our manifestation capability. That's
Yeah,
what scared
and
the shit out of Anu, the king of the Anunnaki Empire. And he started all his dark shit with Enlil and flooding the whole goddamn planet and everything else. They were afraid of us, pure and simple.
yeah, we got the 43 strands. Ha!
Yeah.
yeah,
In your face.
yeah.
We're sitting there trash talking in arrogance to the rest of the audience who are rolling their eyes. Oh my gosh, we ever going to train these guys?
If people want more sort of information on, especially the extraterrestrial side of things, I would highly suggest reading Elena's book, The Cedars, and her other books. I did have a bunch of contact with her originally, including what you saw that email. She was the very, very first person to get Paul's work, essentially talking about anti-gravity and electrogravitics along with Dr. Sala like 3 or 4 days later, right? So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
she was not contradicted. Her physics is not good. She doesn't explain it well. She makes an effort at it and talks to Ea and Thoran and a whole bunch of them. But by getting it and not hearing anything negative back, that's a good thing. That says that
yeah, well,
the
exactly.
information was correct because Thoran would have corrected her,
Yeah,
or
and
Ea, probably both of them. Yeah.
well, yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
if you haven't bought her latest Encyclopedia Galactica, the second version,
right, which
go
I
get it.
haven't. I
It's
haven't, yeah.
$65 at Amazon. It is unbelievably cool. I started reading, I read 100 pages in an hour last night. It's
Yeah,
just, and it's all AI driven. She's structured these beings the best as she can with downloads from Ea's library and the Federation in general, and
yeah,
talks about all their idiosyncrasies. It's
yeah,
just amazing. If
yeah.
you think we got problems, there is a 4 billion-year-old war still ongoing in this galaxy. 4 billion years these two have been fighting. And I'm going, holy shit, I thought we were fucked up.
And it's also important to know that, like you talked about Anu, and it's important to know that that's where she comes from. She's part of the house
Yeah.
of
She's
that.
Anunnaki, yeah.
She is Anunnaki 1,000% exactly. So she was also with Ea when Adam was created on board the Nibiru in a biolaboratory called Eden. She was
It was
with.
on Nibiru. I did not know that. I thought it
It,
was on this planet, but in a
no,
bubble of some kind. But
yeah, it was on board his ship, and that ship is parked in Jupiter's
it's back
atmosphere.
in Jupiter's orbit now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So
It's as big as our moon. My God, the thing is huge.
yeah,
Um, Yeah,
and
no, amazing stories. And I don't think it's any accident that the Anunnaki Empire moved itself to 8 light years away. They're headquartered around Sirius B,
mhm,
which, the brightest star in the sky for us. You can't miss that thing. It's a flamethrower. And they parked themselves after ruling what? At 3/4 of this galaxy at one point. The Psychar come along. They work out some kind of a deal so they don't kill each other. And that's when all the bad stuff happened with Enlil. But they moved the headquarters of their empire to Sirius B, which is just our next door neighbors.
yeah,
I don't think that's an accident.
yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. Well, should we shut the recording off now, or do you guys have any other
Oh my
comments or
God, we're still
questions? Or
recording. I forgot about
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for coming along. Cheers.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks.